Thank you so much for joining this growth support conversation, where we facilitate growth for customer support professionals, teams, and functions. I'm your host, Neil, and today I'm joined by Austin Emser, the co-founder and CEO of Stylo, an AI solution for Zendesk, to talk about a big ongoing discussion in support right now, AI and the potential that it has within support. How'd you get into AI, Austin?
So it's something that I kind of stumbled into. I met my co-founder at this point, probably 6 or 7 years ago. Like one of the smartest people I've probably ever met. And really, I first started learning about, all the ins and outs of AI through him. So I kind of stumbled on it accidentally and honestly.
So you've been now working with AI for the same 6 or 7 years, or a little bit shorter than that?
Well, AI has changed so much in the last probably 3 months that I certainly wouldn't say working with the same AI, right? Like, I mean, it's been such an unbelievable journey just over the last, think back to when OpenAI and ChatGPT came out. That's the only thing that everyone was talking about. Oh my gosh, look at all these cool use cases. How are my kids going to write a legitimate book report now that I could just ask GPT to do it? And that's so different than, even just a year ago before all of that. So, certainly working with different bits and pieces, but the building blocks that we have to utilize today are just so far past, what was there even just months ago.
Or even what there will be tomorrow, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're so excited for too.
Nice. And for you, when you got into it, when you started really looking at Stylo, building Stylo out, what started you to really focus in on the mission there?
Yeah, so part of the reason that we chose customer support as a whole is as we can all see, there's a big opportunity there to solve particularly some of these really tactical problems that are the things that make the queue grow from day to day. Every time, busy season hits, we get further and further behind. And it's like you go through all the steps where, hey, all of our customers are asking about, let's take something simple, a password reset, right? Something that I'm sure it's in the knowledge base, or it's very clear when you go to log in on the site. Customers should probably have looked there first, but unfortunately they never do. They reach out to support. If you let them set the priority, it's going to be a P5 fire drill every time. And it's just all of these little tickets that hit the queue that it's where, I would hope that our teams would have more time to be focusing on those really complex issues that make a really big difference to some of those relationships. So just kind of looking at that, it became, very obvious to many of us, obviously, that, there is such an opportunity to help elevate what we're doing in support to be able to focus on those more impactful activities.
That makes a lot of sense. And I was reading on the Stylo blog as well. You say there's a lot of misconceptions around what AI is going to do for support and kind of these things that people think will happen, but most likely they're really, really not. And one of the things that replace my job. I don't think what you mentioned specifically there, it'll give us time and room to focus on the more complex and this needs human attention now priority. And it frees up those tactical issues that you're talking about and clearing up the queue. One of the other misconceptions that was on there was it's expensive to really get started with, and it's a huge financial push to lessen it. And you say, hey, there's a lot of tools out there that you can get started with, very easy and not as expensive of a cost. I'm curious to understand a little bit more about the trust and safety side of that. With so many tools coming out where AI will be readily available for teams to be able to implement, how do you trust the multitude of tools that are available for such a cheap cost and say, hey, yeah, a lot of times it's what you get what you pay for, but at the same time, what do you think?
Yeah, so a lot of good questions in there. So let's maybe work some of those backwards and into that trust and safety we're talking about. That's a huge piece, right? Like, here it is. Our support has a ton of data that I wouldn't want the world to know. It's our important customer information. We have our diligence to make sure that we're keeping that safe. And if we just plug in any app that we find in the one of the different marketplaces, how do we know that that's even legitimate? And that's where I think, granted, it comes with plenty of red tape, but there's been this push for overall, security and compliance that we've been seeing building over the last, I'd say, particularly 5 to 7 years. Most of my background, I come from cybersecurity, third-party risk and compliance, so this is very up my wheelhouse. And with that, I think it's the important questions to be asking. Do you have a SOC 2 Type 2? What do you do, from a PII perspective? Are you going to be using our data for training purposes, and is that being anonymized? Like, how could that cross between these different environments? And there's some really critical questions that are obviously an important part of that to be asking. And that's where, particularly for those out there that have a security team, this is an area it is worth chatting with them about for sure. It's something that we do all need to be taking seriously. And when looking at a partner from an AI perspective, asking some of these right questions is really, really critical.
Nice. That's super important, especially with so much security in the cyberspace really happening right now around this topic. For those people who, like, it is readily available, it's very quick, probably easy. You just go to a marketplace, install, hey, we have it. When do you think a support team would be ready for something like that? And when do you think it's probably not the right time that you should be looking at that?
That's a really great question. So, I mean, with that, there's a few kind of table stakes, right? I think organizations need to cover the basics, have a knowledge base, right? Like some of these little things, make sure that we're organizing, some of the different ticket queues. Where do things need to be routed to? Some of these really basics. If it is something that you feel would be really easy, where I'll keep coming back to the password reset. Maybe that's something where you create a macro or two to start. Having some of those basics is a really important thing to start, because AI can solve a whole lot of problems, but it's not going to solve world peace, unless some of those basics have been done. Now, once those very basics have been done, that's where AI starts to get a lot more exciting, and that's where it's so different, the AI of yesterday versus the AI of today. And there's so many solutions out there. Probably we'll log in tomorrow and some new company will have launched in the AI space as well. So there's a big difference between how do we get set up, how do we onboard, what does that look like? And really, where modern AI technologies and similar to what we provide today, the implementation shouldn't be very hard. For instance, what we do is we look through, hey, all the different knowledge base articles, let's understand and start to break down what are some of these problems and how could they be answered in this consistent manner. Things like, based on how some of the best agents are responding to tickets, what are some of those correct answers, in building up this overall kind of AI knowledge center. And ultimately with that, instead of us having to do traditional, we think of AI training as this like really hard exercise where we have to say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, like 3,000 times and months later before it starts to understand us. This is a place where, today, I'd argue you really shouldn't be doing training with AI, and if considering solutions that require that, looking towards some of these more modern approaches.
You mentioned training it and also knowledge bases and help centers. I have two questions around that. One, for knowledge managers, people who are actually managing to take care of that knowledge base, to upkeep it, to make sure the information is accurate.
Yeah.
For them, do you think that there's going to be more pressure added to make sure that that information is accurate?
Uh, I certainly do. And I think for good reason. Whereas I think, today when we consider, should I be writing knowledge base articles and centers? The unfortunate truth, let's be honest, is we write a knowledge center and 3 people in the next year are going to look at it. It's like, it kind of feels like a whole lot of work for nothing. That's where more internal knowledge help centers, I think, have been more of the kind of de facto standard, right? Because instead of us needing to write this beautifully to be customer facing, we can kind of get this quick and dirty Q&A center where it's new people on board and the team, they have a place to look. I think, either method from, at least from what our AI looks at is taking those into account. But to the overall question of are these knowledge repositories, whether internal, external, I think they're going to be a lot more important, because now it isn't just a case of we're enabling our customers or some of our internal agents with this information, but we're also using that to give that consistent response that we're looking like from an AI perspective. So I think over the next 2 to 3 years, that's only going to become more and more important. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of projects that pop up here in the next few months.
Definitely huge. And for those people who will be implementing, who will be trying it, for organizations who really want to get started with it,
Mhm.
at what stage do you think it's almost critical or like needed to say, hey, we need a dedicated person to manage AI tools specifically?
So it really depends on the structure of the business. So that's my cop-out answer. For instance, for organizations that are growing really fast, there's a point where you cannot hire fast enough, and with how long it takes to get people up and to the races, it can be such a lag period based on growth, that for those fast growing organizations, I think that's a great example of, you just don't have time. You need to start looking elsewhere. Also, let's be honest, particularly for those in kind of some of the tech and software markets, the economy's been better. Unfortunately, we're seeing headcount cut everywhere. And it's a case where we have the same or smaller team to deal with more and increasing tickets. Another example where, it starts to turn into efficiency. Given that, I think, those are just 2 examples. It depends everywhere. But I think just, being able to level up the team, so many times we see organizations where there's certain agents that kind of get stuck in tier 1 support roles where, they would like to be moving up to some of these more complex tickets. But the problem is they've gotten so good at this and so efficient that the business can't afford to promote them upwards. And I think, this is just, another great case where with AI to be able to help take care of some of those tier 1 tickets and overall increase the efficiency, enabling some of those promotion strategies internally.
That's a really, really good way to put it. And I love the fact that you mentioned, as people get stuck in tier 1 and putting this in, maybe AI takes over those tier 1 tickets to really start building that efficiency. I was
Mhm.
thinking about this and I thought there are so many tools that are implementing AI when you talk about tier 1. And for Stylo, for example, which is a tool that helps you build responses and prompts to actually is that customer facing interaction. You
Right.
also have tools on the other side of it, like auto QA tools that are using AI to say, hey, this is good quality, this is not good quality, this is doing quality assurance for the actual responses themselves. How do you build the connection between, hey, this is a tool we're using for AI to replace the service, and hey, this is an AI tool that's grading the quality? Then you have AI grading AI. What's that interaction look like for you?
Yeah, so really, really great point, right? Because we have these different sides, and when I think of QA, at least, it can be a little bit of a dirty word from the sense of like, we think of it like, oh, we have Big Brother watching everything that we do, and like, is this consistent? At the same time, obviously, there's plenty of very legitimate needs. We need to make sure that we're responding to customers appropriately in a right brand voice and with a consistent response to similar problems every time. Ultimately, I think the real difference is going to be where, especially as AI, such as Stylo, we are helping create this more universal brand voice and bring consistency to the table, where QA tools ultimately, I don't think that the need is going to be there like it has been historically. There isn't this huge variance in responses. We're serving up information to say, hey, here's similar tickets where this problem was solved, in this correct, most efficient way possible. And I think kind of as a result of that, we're not going to have that same need from a QA perspective. It potentially will move, to the more complex tickets that are more solely based on humans. But I'm sure there's going to be instances, to your point, of AI grading AI. But I imagine that's going to be a pretty short-lived problem.
Yeah, also then probably the focus shifts to making sure that it's more, instead of quality checking reps, but quality checking that the AI is still on track with the tone and voice that you want, and retraining it per se to say, hey, let's adjust here, let's adjust there.
Exactly. And I think, that's been one of the most exciting things that we've seen from some of our customers is it can be really hard. I think back, it's like, okay, the first few tickets of the day, everything's good. I'm really excited and friendly and the most empathetic person. And then, 8 hours in, I've got the same question 4 times. I'm frustrated about things that happened earlier today. It's so hard to find that empathy. And I think, that's a place where, it's been so helpful to have some of this AI assistance, because it's like, okay, I know the answer to this problem. I just need to I need to put that in to help craft this beautiful response that I would have had earlier in the day, but now something can assist me to do it. But it is it's a very helpful, because I think we have limited emotional reserves. Unfortunately, AI has infinite.
That's true. And when you do get to focus on those more complex issues, you get more towards that problem solving aspect that all support people love, right? I joined support to be a
Exactly.
problem solver. I love being creative with solutions. Let's get to those ones where they really are challenging and creative solutions.
Most people didn't join support to become an author, right? Like it wasn't about writing things that drew us to the role. It's about solving these challenges, and it's like, let's get there. Like, that's the fun part. That's the exciting part. Let's outsource to have a effectively assistant help us do all the other work.
I love it. And thank you so much for the crash course and getting started with AI and really making sure that, hey, you have the tools that you need. Here's how you can be responsible with them, and here's how you can get started with it. I love it. I have one last question for you.
You got it.
O- Over the course of your journey in support and in the space of AI in your career, what's one piece of advice that you've gotten that you really hold to and stick to, still continuing today?
Um, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned over the years here has just been just keep going. When I think of the early days of Stylo, getting a company off the ground is not a particularly easy thing to do. Everybody says no, from prospects to investors to colleagues to friends. All you get is no all the time. But when you believe something and see that way forward, it's just a matter of just chugging along and making it happen. That's been such a important lesson that I think I've really taken to heart here over the last few years.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for the whole conversation. I've loved it. I really hope that people can take away from this, that it is a tool that you can really, really utilize to make your business more efficient, to make sure that your support people are focusing on the most valuable efforts that they possibly can, and get value out of that. So thank you again, Austin, so much.
You got it. Thanks so much for having me. This was super fun.